And it's time for today's pre-show of our 220-1202. That's our Core 2 A+ study group. Oh, we're just getting started. We're about 10 minutes away from starting the live stream. I have warmed up the stream. You know, it doesn't really need warming up, does it? It just works. I could just start right at the very beginning and we wouldn't have this preamble, but I think this is a good time for us to just hang out, make sure things are working. Or not, as the case may be. It is a rainy afternoon here in Central Florida. We have lots of storms roaming in. We've already had some today. So we really don't know how it's going to go today. We always, whenever it rains in Florida, you always worry about, is the internet going with it? And it certainly could. So we're going to find out. Hello, chat room. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody is ready to go with today's Core 2 study group. As always, of course, I will be presenting questions to you. I guess it would be good if I put the questions up about that thing right there. There it is. And if we showed the, how do we show the results on there? There we go. Now you can join us at the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. That is the one that you can use to not only put your pin in our virtual pin cushion. Let me pull over the controls so I can actually, made it sound like those were super heavy. It's really light. Okay. Nope, that was me. Same thing. See, there we go. That's what we're doing right there. Can I do this? I sure can. There we go. Maybe I'll put myself down here so you can actually see it. Hope everybody's doing well. So wherever you are in the world, you can put your digital pin in our virtual pin cushion here, our virtual map. You can do that by going to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. That is the same link, maybe that I should say a little slower, professormesser.com/QA. And that's the one you can use to not only answer the questions that we will present today, but you can also use that link to submit questions to me for the second hour. So it's a little tab at the top of the screen. You can flip back and forth there and submit your questions for the, what we call the after show, which is more just sort of an extension of the first hour. But it's kind of fun, right? Okay. Well, with that, let's go back to this. We could probably get rid of me there. There we go. Oh, hope everybody is doing well. It's a Friday. We usually don't do these live streams on a Friday, but here we are. Here we are. It's kind of fun, though, to do one on a Friday every once in a while. Chat room's asking, is there a difference between the 1201 and the 1202? Oh, yes, those are two different exams with completely different exam objectives. In fact, you can go back to our study group from a couple days ago, which was our 1201 or Core 1 study group. Today is the 1202 or Core 2 study group. And yes, the topics here are completely different than the 1201. You have to pass both exams to earn your A+, and the exams are completely different. There's not a lot of overlap between them. So that is how we approach the idea of the 1201 and 1202. I do give an overview of that in the very first video of the A+ course, which I guess technically is the 1201 course, but it really is a precursor for both the 1201 and the 1202. You know, maybe I should do a 1202 specific video. I don't think so. I don't think anybody needs that. I don't think anybody wants that. I don't think nobody's ever asked for that. So I don't think that's really necessary. Because once you kind of start in, and I think most people start in the 1201, you get the overview. And you can watch that overview video whether you're taking the 1201 or the 1202. So either way, you're good. You are good. You are good. There's quite a bit to do here. You know, we're right in the middle of a busy season for us. It's the summer. I know people are kind of transitioning back to school. We're sort of finishing up summer and easing into the fall. We're sort of in that weird spot here in August. And there's a lot happening before the end of the year with CompTIA courses. So we're constantly working on all of those. How much do both exams cost? Well, if you're in the U.S., you can check prices, or U.S., Canada, or U.S. territory. You can check prices at professormesser.com/live, where I have discounts for the exams. So you don't have to pay full price. Or you can just go out to the CompTIA website and see what the full prices are. And if you are in another country, another geography, you'll want to check the prices for your particular country because they do vary depending on where you live in the world. There is all new questions today, by the way. Some folks were asking about that earlier. All new questions. We except for the first one. The first one, we have a review question, and then we just dive right into the new stuff. And of course, I've got performance-based questions for you today. So there's always something. There's always something to talk about. And if you think of a question for me sometime during this first hour, you can, of course, submit it at the link on your screen. You do not have to wait for the second hour to submit your questions. And they should probably be good, real questions. Not, you say real questions. All the questions are real, maybe topical, maybe something we can talk about on a live stream. I get some interesting submissions at times. I would prefer not, but that's okay. I just skip over them. We just don't talk about them. Works for me. How do you get exam objectives? I should have a lower third for that too. The exam objectives are at professormesser.com/objectives. There you go. That will take you right there. And I think I said a couple days ago, I'll be replacing that image on that page. Did I replace it? I did not. I think I took a screenshot. I just haven't gotten around to replacing the image yet. We're working on it. We're getting there. Do not worry. We'll figure it out. Oh, we got a lot going on here. I've got a whole weekend full of things planned for this. Hey guys, is this for A+? It's for A+ Core 2. It's what we're doing today. I need a lower third that says that too. I need to get on the stick here. I need to get with the program. A+ Core 2 is today's topic. And I would think it says that on the Google. It says that on the YouTube display. Doesn't on mine, but I think your title page should show that. I don't think it shows it on the live. Oh, it does show it on the live stream as live page as well. So we're good. We're super good. Oh, it is 3 minutes until we get started. Less than 2 minutes and 15 seconds. We're working on it. That goes by so fast. I usually start setting this up where we do this at 12 noon local time, and I usually turn on everything at 10 local time. That gives me 2 hours to work out any problems. I really don't think 2 hours is long enough, but most of the time everything is fine. It's just a minor thing occasionally. In fact, I think I got the chat working on my live page now. Nobody complained about that. Maybe it was just me, but I think it looks better now at professormesser.com/live. That YouTube chat pops open at the bottom of the video. When do we do my Network Plus live streams? You can find out the dates and times for all of our events at professormesser.com/calendar, or just choose the calendar or events link at the top of the Professor Messer website. Those times and dates sometimes change, so I would highly recommend you keep checking in just to make sure that you have the right date and time. We got about a minute to go till we get started. Hopefully you've been studying your Core 2 content. We'll see how well you know this information today. Should be fun. We've got a minute. There you go. It just flipped over to 1 minute. 1 minute to go. 1 minute. I should probably put up the stuff that I could see here. We're getting there. There we go. Stream is healthy. Stream is healthy. It's a healthy stream. I knew that. I don't think that's what it means. I think what they're saying is different than what I'm thinking. Or perhaps what I'm saying is different than what they're thinking, which is probably a better way to put it. All right. 30 seconds to get there. Should be good. Should be good. Should be good. We've got everything in place. Let's check. Recordings are indeed going. You can kind of see the Cylons down there spinning around. There they are. Bottom right. And we've got links here. Everything looks good here. All of our cameras are working the way we would expect. We're up and live here. I think we're in pretty good shape. That's best non sequitur so far of the chat. Sir, what is this link for? There you go. So there you go. Hey, Mal, good to see you. Thanks for checking in today. Nice to have you here on a Friday. Kind of nice. Have that there. Appreciate you being here. We're in the middle of rain here in Central Florida. Hopefully the weather's nicer down in the Caribbean. Now, technically, is it really out that far? Do we still call it the Caribbean? Do you consider yourself the Caribbean, or is it more just the Atlantic? I guess it sort of is that. Maybe Leeward Islands would be a better way to, I don't know. That's the way it goes. Oh, look, it's 12 noon. Let's find out what happens now. Let's go to our start. I was just chatting with Malk, not paying attention to the time. Oh, are we doing a live stream today? What's going on? That kind of thing. Okay, that looks good. This looks good. That looks good. We're only a minute behind. Let's get things started here, shall we? Let's start the show. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the August 2026 Professor Messer A+ Core 2 study group. This is the study group where I will ask you questions that come directly from the CompTIA Core 2 exam objectives, and we get to see just how much of that content you might know. Stick around for Q&A. If you are here live, we will talk about what you can do to join us on these live streams. It's really, really easy. All you have to do is open up a new browser window and head over to the link that you see on your screen, which is professormesser.com/QA. That is the link that will get you to our website. That is the link that will show you everything you need to know about answering questions live. Now, if you're not watching this live, that link is not going to help you very much, but you can still follow along. And it's interesting, I think, to see what other people are answering in this as well. To see if that link is working, I have for you what we call a rewind question. It's a question from a previous study group. It's the only time you're going to see a question from a previous study group on this live stream, but it's one where I can at least check to be sure you're able to get in, you're able to answer questions, you're able to see what's going on. And the important thing to remember is our standing rule, which is please do not put any answers in the chat room. Please don't put any hints in the chat room. Instead, you want to use that link, professormesser.com/QA, for those answers. So let's look at the questions that we have posed for you. Maybe you remember this one. Let's see how well you do. The question asks, a network administrator needs to manually configure a proxy server for a specific corporate application which is not using transparent redirection. Which Windows utility should be used to define this address? Would it be Network and Sharing Center, Internet Options, Performance Settings, Device Manager, or Indexing Options? Now, if you think you know the answer, go to the link on your screen, which is right here, professormesser.com/QA, to answer this question. Again, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. Use that link, and that's the link that you will use for all of the questions that we will go through today. We will come back to this question in just a moment, so lock in your answer, and we'll see how you do with this one. Thank you so much for joining us. We do one of these study groups for Core 1 and Core 2 every month. We did our Core 1 study group a couple of days ago. It's in our archives. You can go watch it right now, and this will be in our archives immediately after we are done for the Core 2 today. When we're not here live, we have, of course, our entire course is available. Our training course, of course, our course is available on YouTube at professormesser.com/YouTube. We also have our social media links where you can get a daily A+ pop quiz question at professormesser.com/X/Instagram/LinkedIn, and we can email it to you directly as well. You can sign up for those directly on the Professor Messer website. Also let you know that sometime in this first hour, I will be giving you instructions on how you could earn a 1-hour webinar category CEU. If you have no idea what that is, then this probably doesn't apply to you. But folks who have already earned their certification and need some way to renew that cert every 3 years, many of those folks will accumulate continuing education units, or CEUs. Those are used by CompTIA to check that you have kept up with all of the latest in the industry, and it applies and goes towards the renewal of your certification. So just listen in sometime in this first hour. I'll bring all of that to you. Today, we are talking about the A+ exam, specifically the 220-1202. This is also called the Core 2 exam You might also see this referred to as version 15 of the A+ certification. This is an exam version that has been released on March the 25th of 2025, so about a year and a half old at this point, which means we're sort of in this halfway mark of getting these exams done, maybe a little bit less than that, because the estimated retirement for this exam is somewhere around September of 2028. The exam itself is 90 minutes in length. You will get a maximum of 90 questions. You could get fewer than 90 questions, of course. And for the 220-1202, the score that you need to be able to pass is a 700 even, and that is based on a scale from 100 to 900. The exam itself, once you pass both the Core 1 and the Core 2, and you've passed both of those exams, you are then considered A+ certified. So you have to pass both of them to earn your A+ certification, and that certification is good for 3 years, and you can, of course, renew that certification over time. The A+ exams cover different topics on the Core 1 versus the Core 2. The Core 1 focuses on mobile devices, networking, hardware, virtualization and cloud computing, and troubleshooting of all those things. The Core 2 exam, completely different set of topics. We covered, and these will be covered today, we'll talk about operating systems, security, software troubleshooting, and operational procedures, along with troubleshooting of those as well. This is an important delineation between these two. Make sure that you are studying for the right exam with the right content. Make sure that they are the CompTIA A+ 220-1201 or 220-1202. Those are the most recent versions of this exam, so make sure that you are aware of them. Also let you know that we will be having this available as a replay immediately after we're done. I also create an audio-only podcast distributed version of this, and it's available on our website at professormesser.com/podcast, along with a lot of important or I guess very common podcast websites. And if it's a streaming media website like Spotify, you can go to Spotify and just search for Professor Messer, and you'll find the podcast there as well. So lots of ways to catch up on things you might have missed if you happen to miss one of our previous study groups. We also have a YouTube video description that is detailed. It has a minute-by-minute breakdown of everything we do. That's something that you simply cannot do automatically and have it anywhere near level of accuracy. So what's nice is we have my marketing manager, Lori. Hi, Lori. She's watching this on the replay. She is going through all of this and putting in timestamps in our YouTube video description. This allows you to click on a timestamp and go directly to the information you need, which might speed up your learning process, your studying efforts. This is something that maybe will speed that process up for you. Thank you, Lori, for doing it. If that's something you in the chat room like, make sure you give Lori a heart in the chat. Let her know that's something you appreciate as well. We also have our chat available on Discord. It is available always. There's always somebody in there doing something all throughout the day and night. So if you're up for studying, somebody is probably there up for studying as well. Go to professormesser.com/Discord to join us. That Discord is where I will be after we're done here. It's a great way to keep up with people who are studying. People will open a new study room at an instant, just an ad hoc, and everybody will join, and you can go through videos, you can go through Q&A. A lot of great, smart people on that chat. It's a great place to study, not just for your A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus, but for other certifications as well. You can join that with the link on your screen, professormesser.com/Discord. And of course, eventually you will need to take your exam, and you could certainly go out to the CompTIA website and pay full price for that exam. But why would you do that when, if you're in the US, Canada, or a US territory, you can purchase these vouchers at a discount? Exactly the same voucher you would get on the CompTIA website, but you're just paying less money. That seems like a deal. This is something you can find at professormesser.com/vouchers. Not only do you get your voucher at a discount, I'll give you something a little bit extra. I've created an ebook that has a series of tips and tricks specifically designed for studying for CompTIA exams. So if you're trying to think about the method that you're using for studying, we've got some study tips for you in there. We also have some strategies that you can use during the exam itself that could potentially get you a few extra points. It's all in our Exam Hacks ebook, and the Exam Hacks ebook is not for sale. You can only get it with the purchase of a voucher or a purchase of one of our success bundles. So head over there and get your discounted voucher at professormesser.com/vouchers. Let's go back to the question we asked earlier, which is, a network administrator needs to manually configure a proxy server for a specific corporate application which is not using transparent redirection. Which Windows utility should be used to define this address? Is it Network and Sharing Center, Internet Options? I guess it would be good if I was able to give you the view of this, but now all of my buttons no longer work. Is that bad? I'm just asking. I'm just wondering if that's a bad thing. It's whenever your video switcher crashes in the middle of a live stream, you know you're in trouble. Is the answer Network and Sharing Center, Internet Options, Performance Settings, Device Manager, or Indexing Options? Let's see what you chose. We're going to stop our poll and see that 52% of you say the answer is Network and Sharing Center. 34% of you say the answer is Internet Options. 7% down to single digits say Indexing Options. 5% for Performance Settings. And in last place at 2% is Device Manager. So what would the answer be? We have 52% that said Networking Sharing Center, and that 52% would not be correct. The answer was the one in second place. 34% of you with Internet Options say that that was what you were looking for. The Internet Options have a ton of different features inside of it. There are a number of different tabs across the top and things that you need to know about. But in the case of configuring a proxy server, you will want to go into this configuration and change the proxy server configurations. This internet configuration you can see under the Connections tab, specifically for VPN and proxy settings. And although certainly proxy servers themselves are not a very common way to implement technology and internet connectivity in many organizations, there are still some using a proxy server. Some proxy servers are transparent, which means you don't have to do any configurations on your computer. It just naturally uses the proxy without you having to configure anything. But there are a series of proxies that are not transparent. Those proxy servers need an explicit configuration in every end station that needs to use the proxy. And for Windows, you would need to go into your Internet Options to find that connection and define the proxy server. That's why Internet Options is the answer that we were looking for. Network and Sharing Center is primarily used to configure the initial network connection and network connectivity. Once you have that network connectivity, you'll then need to go to Internet Options and tell that internet connectivity how to get to the proxy server. So a two-step process, I guess, if you want to look at it that way, from a very beginning config. But if you need to configure a proxy server, Internet Options is the best place to do it, given the options that we had here. We also had 7% that said Indexing Options. That index is referring to the files that are contained on your computer. Whenever you search in the Windows search, it is that index that is able to find the information in those files very quickly. So certainly this would be a good place to go for looking for data, but has nothing to do with configuring a proxy. You also have Device Manager. 2% of you said Device Manager, and Device Manager is certainly good for configuring hardware and making sure that Windows can work properly with your hardware, but Performance Settings are not used, or Device Manager not used for configuring your proxy. Same thing for Performance Settings. Performance Settings are there to provide more granularity with the performance of your system, but it doesn't configure your proxy settings. Proxy is not about performance. And if anything, proxies are about having bad performance. Proxies are not the most efficient way to communicate on the internet, but it is does provide some very valuable security features, which is why people still continue to use them, even with that little performance hit. So there you go. There's your answer. Internet Options, 34% of you got that right. And I think you did a pretty good job with that one, keeping up with the different answers that are available. So now that we've gone through our rewind question, let's jump into brand new questions, things you've never seen before in this chat. So let's see how we do with this one. This first question, by the way, as we do with every new study group is we give you a performance-based question. And this next question is indeed a performance-based question. Now, if you've never heard of performance-based questions before, let me give you a very quick overview. Most of us are familiar with multiple choice questions. The ones that we just had was a question and then multiple options to choose from. Those multiple options means that we could guess if we didn't know. And when there are 5 options like this, you have a 20% chance of getting that question right, even if you guessed. Well, CompTIA doesn't want to make it quite so easy for you. They want to see if you really know this content and you're not just guessing to get points off of that question. So they've created a series of questions right at the beginning of your exam. Usually it's a handful, about 3 to 5 to 7 questions or so that are not multiple choice. And anything that is not a multiple choice question falls under this category of performance-based questions. That means it could be something at a command prompt. There could be a fill-in-the-blank question. There could be a drag-and-drop question. There could be putting things in a particular order. They could be anything. So the real thing to keep in mind, and the one thing that I think people probably miss or do not study properly for performance-based questions, is there are an infinite number of ways to ask a performance-based question. So there's no way to know what you will be presented with, but there is a way to know what the content of the question will be like. And that's because everything on the exam is listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. So if you're trying to study for a performance-based question, don't study for how the question is written. That doesn't help you very much. You need to study the content. As long as you know the content, it really doesn't matter how they ask the question. You'll be able to answer it without a problem. As an example, I think that's what we're going to do right now is ask you a performance-based question. I bet you're not going to have any problem figuring out how to answer the question, and you're not going to have any problem answering the question. Here is our performance-based question of the month. You are an IT support technician helping Pegasus Construction Services upgrade the physical security of its headquarters. Select the best security control for each of these incidents. And you'll see I have 5 different security incidents written down, and I want you to fill in those incidents with an appropriate security control. Now, in this particular case, for these 5 security incidents, I have more than 5 security controls. So there will be some left over when we are done. The security controls are an access control vestibule, alarm systems, badge reader, bollards, door locks, equipment locks, fences, motion sensors, security guards, and video surveillance. It's effectively every physical security control from the official CompTIA exam objectives. So of those, how many are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I need you to pick 5 of those to go into this list. Let's go through these incidents. The first one is a delivery driver accidentally presses the accelerator instead of the brake while facing the building's glass entrance. What could go wrong? What security control would be the best choice to manage or prevent that incident? Next on the list is an employee uses an approved badge at the main entrance. An unidentified person attempts to walk through the doorway behind the employee without presenting a credential. What security control should we put in place to prevent that? The next one is at 2:15 a.m., a person enters the server room. Management wants the intrusion detected immediately and also wants visual evidence showing what occurred. What would we use for that one? That'd be interesting to see. Actually, there might be 2 that I might want to fit on that one. We can talk about that at the end. Next one is an unauthorized person enters an open plan office and attempts to remove a company laptop from a desk. This happens all the time, by the way. Random people will walk into an office building. They will walk down. They're dressed nicely. They walk down a hallway. They grab a laptop off someone's desk and they walk out the door. Happens a lot more often than you would think. So what security control would be the best choice for that one? And lastly, an attacker forces an open, locked loading dock door. Management needs the security team notified immediately and wants personnel dispatched to investigate. Those are your 5 security incidents, and I want you to match a security control for each one of those. Now, if you're putting this in online, you can just give me all 5 of those. You don't have to write anything special out. You can simply give me all 5, but keep in mind what you chose for that one, because we're going to go through all of these, and I don't summarize these for performance-based questions. We don't get a fancy graph at the end. We'll just talk about what we think the right answer is. On the 220-1202 exam are a series of physical security controls, and that's where this list is coming from. So physical security controls are a great way to keep track of or understand how to prevent things in the physical world or to make the physical world more safe. The physical security part is sometimes forgotten, I think, by many IT professionals because we spend so much time inside of our computers in an operating system, managing security at the bit and byte level, that we almost forget that there is an important security aspect to the physical level. If our devices and computers and servers are not secure, then they can be attacked by anyone. Physical security of a device is incredibly important because if you have physical access to a device, there are many, many ways to circumvent the security at that point. It's much harder to circumvent security when you don't have a way to touch the machine. But getting physical access to a machine changes the issue. It changes the issues that are going to come up from a security perspective. So something to keep in mind. Let's go through all 5 of these and see what I think the best choice for a security control would be for each one of these incidents. So let's go through the very first one, which is a delivery driver accidentally presses the accelerator instead of the brake while facing the building's glass entrance. Which one of these security controls would be the best choice for this? And again, our options are access control vestibule, alarm system, badge reader, bollard, door lock, equipment lock, fence, motion sensor, security guard, and video surveillance. Well, if somebody's outside the building, a lot of those security controls will not cover this particular problem. But one of these security controls that helps a lot on the outside of the building are indeed bollards. Bollards are those, well, I should say they're something that is in the way. It is preventing access of very large things like vehicles from getting anywhere close to the building. If you've ever been to a very popular retailer here in the United States, where the big color is red, in front of their stores are these enormous red concrete balls. They're huge, and you see them initially, and they look very decorative. They look like they fit perfectly with the style and design of the building. If anything, it's sort of iconic when you see their buildings that they have these big red balls in the front. But those are actually bollards. They're to prevent anybody from using their vehicle to run into the front of the building. So very common. Sometimes the bollards are tall and skinny. Sometimes they're really big. There was one place that I visited where the bollards were planters. Enormous, large-sized planters. I can't even get in the picture, but I could not even wrap my arm around them. They were so big. Because they're so full of dirt and they've got these pretty flowers and trees coming out of them, they're very decorative, but they're also bollards. So something to consider if you are planning physical security for a building, that can come in super handy. The next incident on our list is an employee uses an approved badge at the main entrance. An unidentified person attempts to walk through the doorway behind the employee without presenting a credential. This also happens quite a bit. It's probably how the person got in to steal the laptops. They sort of snuck behind somebody on the way in to make that work. That if you're wanting to approach or prevent this type of problem from occurring, you need some way to prevent somebody from sneaking in. Now, I've been in a lot of buildings. I go to a lot of different companies. And many of these companies have a sign right next to the door coming in that says watch behind you. One person for every badge reader prevent anyone from sneaking in. They give you kind of a heads up to let you know that one person should badge in and close the door. Even if you are in a group of 10 people, you just went out to lunch, you came back, one person hits and opens the door, but only one person can go through. So they have to close the door behind them and then the next person to badge in. But that must be done manually. What if we could do that automatically? And you certainly can. A lot of the places I would go will have an access control vestibule. This is either a room or something that's a very small one-person view where you put your badge in, you walk into it, and it closes the door behind you and opens the door in front of you, and you can walk through. Sometimes it's an entire room where you walk into a room, you open the door to get in, and then that door closes behind you and you have to check in with either a guard or somebody who's checking people in to be able to pass through that room. It also becomes a little waiting room, so it's a great middle ground, but it prevents people from sneaking in if you do that. Now, you could put on this list of these other options what other things would work. Alarm system really would not work because it's after the fact, doesn't prevent anybody from getting in, although it might make a lot of noise. Badge reader wouldn't work because a badge reader, that unidentified person doesn't have a badge reader. Security guard could possibly be one of those answers. That certainly, I think, could be a good one to have in that list. And if you chose security guard, I would go with that. I think a better choice is the access control vestibule, but security guard would work in that case as well. So I'm willing to be a little flexible with those. So give yourself a point if you chose security guard in that one as well. The next incident is at 2:15 a.m., a person entered the server room. Management wants the intrusion detected immediately and also wants visual evidence showing what occurred. And as I mentioned, we probably have 2 security controls associated with this one. I only put one into the security control box just because I only had so much room here, but we'll talk about what both of them would be. The first thing is some type of sensor notifying us that someone's in the room at 2:15. This may be something that we set up on a time of day. If anybody enters this room after midnight, alarm and alert on that. And having a motion sensor is a great way to do that because nothing moves in that room unless somebody happens to walk in. So that would be a great way to alarm and alert and provide that intrusion detection immediately when somebody walks in. The other part of this question talked about wanting visual evidence showing what occurred. So I guess I could have put into the same list. I could have had on a separate line video surveillance, which is another great way. That one's kind of a gimme, but I think having both of those in place would help a bit. Not only do we know that there was motion, now we can go to the video immediately and see what that motion was. It's a common security tool we use just on our houses these days. Everybody has, or most people have, those digital doorbells these days. When somebody hits the doorbell or walks by, there's motion detection and a motion alert, and then you can have a look at the video. Where did this motion come from? Is somebody outside my door? Who is that person? And see it all. We're taking that same technology and we're putting it into this server room. The next security issue is an unauthorized person enters an open plan office and attempts to remove a company laptop from a desk. This, as I mentioned, is something that happened to a company. Actually, multiple companies I have been worked for in the past have had this occur, where somebody walks in, they're in business attire, they look like a normal employee, they've got stuff in their hands, maybe they're looking through a printout, maybe they grab something off the printer to make themselves look like they're supposed to be there. They walk down the way, they grab the laptop, they grab that tablet, and they walk out the door. Just that easy. And you never see them again. So there's a lot of things you can do to help prevent the access to the data once the laptop gets out. But how do we stop it before it becomes an issue, before that laptop leaves? Well, we need some type of lock on our desk. We used to use these a lot with laptops that would be sitting on a desk permanently, or if somebody's coming in and working at a flex office where you just pick whatever is available at the time, there would be locks available and you could lock it to your computer. Some of the newer computers don't necessarily have those lock connections on them any longer, so it's a different locking mechanism that you have on your desk, or something where you put the laptop into a locked area so that nobody can access those. But that is certainly a concern, and having some type of lock would prevent somebody from at least taking the laptop with them. Doesn't stop them from getting in the door. It doesn't stop them from seeing what they're seeing inside of the building, but that is something to consider. You probably, if you look at the documentation of your computer or your laptop, you'll notice there are options there. And I think a lot of people will take add-ons. There's these lock attachments that you can permanently affix to the case of the laptop itself. That's another great way to connect it to the lock that you are using on your desk. Next incident, the last incident we have, is that an attacker forces open a locked loading dock door. Management needs the security team notified immediately and wants personnel dispatched to investigate. And in that case, if somebody is opening a door, they're forcing open a door, we would hope that there's some type of sensors on that loading dock door, and the alarm should be going off at that point. We should have them on our windows, on our doors, especially doors that aren't normally used, like you would have with the loading dock. Once it's after hours, nobody should be opening that door. So having an alarm would let us know that something's going on at the loading dock. We need to get back there and figure out what's happening. And that'd be a great way to notify personnel and the security team to go over and have a look at that and see if something is going on with the loading dock. Alarm would have certainly found that attacker forcing open the door. So those are our security incidents. That means that we did not use badge reader. We did not use door lock. We did not use fence. We did not use did we use the motion sensor? We did use the motion sensor. We didn't use security guard, although I think we did as an option for one that we looked at earlier. And all the others we did use. So a delivery driver pressing the accelerator instead of the brake. We'll put some bollards in front to prevent them from going through the windows of the building. An employee using an approved badge and having somebody sneak in. Let's put in an access control vestibule. That would certainly stop that one. At 2:15 a.m., somebody entering the server room. Why don't we put in a motion sensor and some video surveillance? And that would allow us not only to see something happening at that time of the morning and even get an alert or an alarm, but now we can go back and see who was that at 2:15. An unauthorized person entering an open plan office and stealing a laptop. Let's lock everything up. That will prevent that from occurring. And then an attacker forcing open a loading dock door. Put it as part of the alarm system, and you will know immediately if something happens with that. So there is our performance-based question of the month. Hopefully you're now a little more familiar with the physical security controls you can expect to see on the Core 2 exam. That is a comprehensive list of all of the security controls. So if you are in the middle of that section of the exam, this might be something that becomes a little bit more familiar to you, something you can use to be more familiar with what you can do physically to help with security, just as you have digital or logical security that you can work with as well. Hopefully you did well with that one. Let's shift gears back to a multiple choice question. The next question on our list is this one that asks, when troubleshooting a missing OS error at startup, which of the following should be performed first? Should you check for USB drives, connect to a different power source, replace the motherboard battery, reseat the RAM modules, or upgrade the power supply wattage? When troubleshooting a missing OS error at laptop, which of the following should be performed first? Check for USB drives, connect to a different power source, replace the motherboard battery, reseat the RAM modules, or upgrade the power supply wattage. If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, to submit your answer. You might have even run into this error before. You might have had to troubleshoot this error before. It's not a fun one. You do not want to turn on your computer and get missing OS. That is not a good feeling. That is not a happy time. So you may have been asked to come over and fix this one, or it may be your computer that you're trying to fix. Well, what would you do first? What's the first thing that you would do to help address this issue? If you think you know the answer, lock it in right now. Go to professormesser.com/QA to lock in your answer. See what you happen to think it might be. This is, by the way, one of the troubleshooting tasks that are specifically listed in the CompTIA exam objectives. So this is certainly a troubleshooting process that you need to be familiar with for the exam. Let's see how you did. When troubleshooting a missing OS error at startup, which of the following should be performed first? Would it be to check for USB drives, connect to a different power source, replace the motherboard battery, reseat the RAM modules, or upgrade the power supply wattage? What did you choose? Let's see how you did. We'll close our poll. Some pretty strong numbers. 70% of it, of the responses are check for USB drives. We have 19% that said reseat the RAM modules. We've got 7% that said replace the motherboard battery. You've got 4% that say connect to a different power source. And then we have 0%. Nobody chose upgrade the power supply wattage. So this really gets into the details of troubleshooting operating system problems. And certainly when you are trying to boot from a computer and getting a message saying there's a missing OS, then you will indeed want to check for USB drives. Wait a second. Why would you want to check for a USB drive when your operating system is on a different drive? Well, this is what we run into all the time, because you might turn on your computer and get a message that says operating system not found, missing operating system, missing OS. A lot of things might occur there when we work through it. This might also occur because you might have installed a separate operating system side by side with the one that exists there, and it might have changed your bootloader, and it no longer knows where to go to boot the operating system on your computer. This happens a lot if your computer is set up to boot from additional drives. So if you're booting from if you're starting your computer and before it goes to your primary SSD or hard drive, it might check other drives to see if they're there to boot from those. And one of those checks would be for a bootable USB. So you might have a bootable USB that just doesn't have an operating system on it, and that might cause the entire boot process to stop right there because it started booting from the USB. The USB didn't have an operating system, therefore we're done with booting. There's nothing more we can do. We'll put an error on the screen, operating system not found, missing OS or something similar, and then you can remove that removable storage device, in this case, a USB drive, and restart the computer. And now it's not going to stop on that one. So this might be a good idea where we go through and deal with all of these. This is from a 220-1202 video, the section 3.1, and the video is called Troubleshooting Windows from the Core 2 exam. Now, you could also, if this is not related to a boot drive, then this might be a problem with your primary storage drive. So you could have startup repair go through that, or it might be something you might want to change manually in the Windows BCD, that is the boot configuration database, and modify on older systems the boot.ini. Normally, we don't have a boot.ini these days. We're working with the boot rec command to make those changes to your BCD. So of the answers that you had available, the only one of these that would be the best choice for the first thing that we're doing would indeed be to check for USB drives. And 70% of you got that one absolutely right. If we're missing an operating system, that means that everything else in the computer is working fine. We just aren't finding an OS. The RAM modules on your system, and I realize there's a little bit Department of Redundancy department happening there, but your random access memory that you have in your system is designed to be checked during the boot process. If we were missing memory, it would give us an error, but that would tell us that there was a memory problem. Just because you have a different amount of memory in your computer doesn't have anything to do with finding the operating system. So in this case, reseating the RAM modules is not going to solve the problem of a missing operating system. 7% of you said to replace the motherboard battery. If you were seeing that the time and the date were not correct after unplugging the computer and plugging it back in, you might want to replace the motherboard battery, but the motherboard battery has nothing to do with the location of your operating system. And so replacing that battery, not going to help you very much. You have 4% of you that said connect to a different power source. A missing operating system has nothing to do with how much power or or little power you may be getting. So that's one of those cases. We also have upgrade the power supply wattage. Nobody went for that one either. That's not something that would ever be in there. So hopefully you're familiar with some of those. I think if you were working through the details of what we were doing, maybe this would be something you can break down. Well, it wouldn't be memory, it wouldn't be battery. So at least you can throw some of those things out the window. Now, of course, this could be other problems. As we mentioned, maybe you did change the configuration of your system. Maybe you installed another operating system, so you would need to run check the Windows boot configuration, but that wasn't one of the options that we had here either. So one of those scenarios is going to be important to consider. But I think if you're somebody who is working through these different challenges, working through understanding where the problems might be, then I think that's where we would go. And with that, it looks like I've lost all power on my laptop. This is in the middle of what we're doing. There's no more power on laptop. This is the laptop I normally will use right here. You see how the screen is very dark? Do you see how the camera up here is completely black? I'm having somewhat of a challenge today with power, and I want to start it back up. And I've checked the power outlet. I don't even know if this power outlet's working. Let's check really quick. I'm going to plug in my phone because it's all USB these days, right? Plenty of power. Oh, it is booting. It is booting. What am I talking about? Let's plug the power back in right there. And we'll check. There we go. How hard was that? I love a live event, everybody. That's when you really can test yourself. That's when you really get to see how much does he sweat? How much is that a problem? Certainly something to consider. Hopefully you were familiar with the boot process. You went through this one. Checking for USB drives was the answer we were looking for. 70% of you got that one absolutely right. And that is the correct answer. That's the one we wanted. That's the one that will tell you that very easily we can remove the USB drives, restart the computer, and you should be just fine. You'll notice already we've gone through a number of different topics. The chat room's already been mentioning this, of course. We've already talked about security. We've talked about operating systems. We did a little bit in the initial configurations of or initial questions that we had, covering a lot of different topics. And you'll notice on the exam there are hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of topics available. There's so many that we have 137 videos in total for our entire A+ course, which is over 19 hours of content. That's a lot of content. That's a lot of stuff going on. And that's why I highly recommend you look through these, that you go through the process of looking at all of the Core 1 and Core 2 exam objectives, which cover all of the topics you see here, things like hardware and networking and laptops and cloud computing and command line and security and cloud. All of those things are in there. This may be a challenge, though, to be able to keep track of all of this information, especially when you think there are 137 videos to go through. That's why I created my course notes. My course notes are designed to give you all of that information in one single source. They look a little bit like this. Here's a set of my PDF version of the course notes. And these course notes have everything inside of them. You have this information when you're looking at it. So you can see all of the text, all of the important graphics, all of the tables, everything that was in that video. We've grabbed that information and put it into a concise form, exactly why we call it a set of course notes. This is something that can help you not only remember what you may have watched in that video before. If you didn't watch the video, it's something that might give you a little more insight on it. And not only do we have it as the PDF version that you see here, something that you can put on any of your devices and take wherever you are, but you also have a physical version that you can put. This physical edition is identical to the digital edition, has the same information with the same screens and the same breakdown, the same tables and the same graphics, but it's in a form that you can take anywhere with you. We print these on demand when you purchase one. So while you're waiting for this to be delivered to you in the mail, You get access to the digital edition at no extra cost. So you can download the digital edition while you're waiting on the physical edition to arrive. Those course notes are available on our website. If you'd like to learn more about those, they can be seen at professormesser.com/1202 notes, or you can go to the main menus on the website to find those as well. That's something that not only will helps us keep our site going, we think it's a great tool that you could use for your studies. Have a look on the website, professormesser.com/1202 notes. Let's now do another question. What a perfect time to go into that one. This next question asks, the marketing department manager is using their budget to pay for a custom software module on the company's CRM. Which specific role does this manager occupy in the context of the change management process? Is it a business customer, a technical lead, a sponsor, a change board member, or part of the IT team? If you think you know the answer, you can lock in your answer at professormesser.com/QA and then tell me what you think the answer is. As always, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We will certainly step through all of the possible answers at the end of this, so we'll see how well you do. So easy. If you're watching this live, of course, that QA is available to you. If you're watching this on replay, it will not be available, but you do have some options anyway. This might be something, as you're going through change management, you'll really want to know where you go with this. So hopefully this is something that can help you as well. This is something, if you're ever working through, I guess, trying to understand more about the business side of things, how do we implement changes in our environment? This is not just a case where you can just make a change whenever you'd like. There has to be a change control process. So that is what this question focuses on, and it's a process you definitely have to know for your CompTIA exam. This is something I've always had to deal with, and when you get into even the smallest size companies, you can't just make changes in the middle of the day. Any change you make could have an effect on what happens with all of the other things on your system. So you can make a single change and not realize that you're breaking 10 other things. You have to test these things before implementing them. The whole change control process is at sometimes tedious, but it is always something that is giving us a standard set of processes and procedures to prevent any type of dramatic outages on our network. Let's see how you did with this one. The marketing department manager is using their budget to pay for a custom software module on the company's CRM. Which specific role does this manager occupy in the context of the change management process? Is this manager a business customer, a technical lead, a sponsor, a change control member, or part of the IT team? Let's see how you did with this one. Let's close our poll. It's a rainbow, everybody. We've got a little bit of everything there. We have 35% of you, if we go with the plurality of you, say that's a change board member. 25% say that is a technical lead. 23% say that's a sponsor. 15% say it's a business customer. And then 2% say that person is part of the IT team. Well, whenever you start working through change control, there are a lot of different parts of the organization involved. This adds to the complexity of the change control process. Indeed, adds to the politicizing of the change control process as well. We know we're going to need the IT team. They're the ones actually making the change. In this particular case, we're dealing with a marketing department manager. They're not the ones doing the change. They're just paying for the change. So it would not be part of the IT team. The business customer is the one using the technology. So you have to be at least able to know how to use the technology. This may be even a person that we go to verify that the change we made is working properly. And then you have the organization sponsor. This is the person who's paying for it. They're the person who has the budget to be able to purchase that particular software or that particular hardware. This might also be a person who's in charge or responsible for the money that is made by using this particular software. So the profits of the company may be based on this person purchasing that particular software. We refer to that as the sponsor in the organization. And that certainly sounds a lot like what we have here is a sponsor. That is what 23% of you chose. I know you can't see it because my big head's there. 23% of you are that slice of the pie on the bottom that said sponsor. And indeed, that is the answer that we were looking for. That's the person, they may not even be using the software. The marketing department manager may not be part of using the CRM, but they certainly had the money to purchase the module for the CRM. So in this particular case, of the things that we looked at, 2% said IT team. I think we all realize the marketing department is not part of the IT department, so they would not be part of the IT team. 35% of you said change board member. In fact, the plurality of you, the largest number of people, chose change board member. And there's nothing in this question that says that the marketing department manager is making the decision as part of the board for all of the changes that are occurring across everything in your organization. This is really the marketing department dealing with marketing department problems. There's probably other changes that are occurring during the same weekend. Maybe there's a storage array that needs to be upgraded. Maybe there's a new server that needs to be installed. Maybe you're changing around some of the networking equipment, and somebody's installing this new module on the company CRM. Can we do all of those on the same day? Do we need to schedule them at different times? Do any of these affect the other when they are working on them? These are the challenges and the questions that the change control board needs to solve. And in this case, the change board member is not part of the marketing department. That would probably be someone else, and that's why that would not be the answer that we were looking for. A technical lead is usually someone in IT who understands the software. They've already done installs of this software. They've already performed upgrades to this software. They're very familiar with this technology. They're probably going to be the one actually doing the change. They are the technical lead for the organization. So the 25% of you that chose that one had the right idea in mind, but that is not the role of the marketing department manager. And business customer, that's the one that at least comes closest enough to this that you could actually perhaps say, well, that is on the business side. As IT, everyone in the organization is our customer, and you could certainly put it that way. But in this case, the company itself, the business customer would be their customers. So the CRM contains a list of their customers. The marketing department manager themselves is not a customer of the business. So in this case, 23% that said sponsor, you were spot on. The sponsor's the one with the money. Person with the money is the one who bought the CRM. That is the one that best describes this role in the change management process. The change management process is one that, although a bit dry and part of policy and procedure, still an important part of what you deal with on a daily basis in IT. If you're in IT, you will be dealing with change control at some point to some degree. It affects what you do on the weekends. It affects what the business decides to do. There's a lot dealing. There's constant change control meetings going on. There's usually one big change control meeting during the week where everybody decides what's going on this weekend because that's the only time we can upgrade these systems. It is a critical and important role in any organization. Make sure you are familiar with that change management process for your Core 2 exam. Will not be the only time you see that on a CompTIA exam. Well done, those of you that answered sponsor. 23% of you got that one absolutely correct. If you're watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would love to send you an email that certifies that you were here for 1 hour of a webinar category CEU. But you can only earn that CEU if you follow these steps. You must follow these steps to earn the CEU. If you deviate from these steps, you will not get the CEU. So it's very simple though. You can't mess this up. The first step is to go to the top or the bottom of the ProfessorMesser.com website. There's a link at the top and the bottom that says Contact Us. Click that link. That's going to bring up a form that asks for your name, asks for your email address, put those in. There's a subject line that it asks for, and in that subject line, please put August 2026 Core 2 or something close to that so I know where this came from. That's a great subject line to use. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, I want you to put the super secret code words of the month, which are sponsor IT team. Those are the super secret code words of the month. Sponsor IT team. So really multiple of those code words. Make sure you put those in there. You can also put anything else you would like into that message. I do read through every single one of these, and I like getting your stories of what you're doing and where you're going and where the process is in your studies. That's always interesting as well. And then send that to me. Just hit the submit button. That now arrives in my inbox, and then it takes me about a week or so. I like to commonly do these on the weekend. So here we are on a Friday, so maybe by Saturday or Sunday, you'll be able to get an email response from me that contains a digitally signed message that signifies and certifies that you are here for a 1-hour webinar category CEU. And then you can use whatever process CompTIA wants you to use to submit those if you are collecting CEUs as part of your renewal. I realize not everybody uses CEUs for this, for your renewal process, and you certainly aren't required to send me an email, but I'm happy to send you the message anyway. Again, the way that you would receive that CEU is to go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put August 2026 Core 2. And in the body of the message, put the super secret code words of the month. What were they again? Sponsor IT team. Send that to me, and I'll turn that around and get you a response, hopefully within a week. hopefully faster. Sometimes a little slower. It just depends on the chaos that surrounds me in normal life. Let's do some more questions. We've got more coming up. Next question on our list is this one. Here it is. There it is. A technician is migrating several large directories over a high latency satellite WAN and requires a feature to resume the transfer if the connection drops. Which command line utility would be the best choice for this feature? Would it be xcopy, gp update/force, format/q, copy/v, or robocopy? Robocopy. A technician is migrating several large directories over a high latency satellite WAN and requires a feature to resume the transfer if the connection drops. Which command line utility would be the best choice for this feature? Would it be xcopy, gp update/force, format/q, copy/v, or robocopy? Do you know the answer? Please no answers in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to professormesser.com/QA and lock in your answer. See how you do with this one. Knowing command lines is important. And on this exam, there are more than a few command lines. There might be 20 command lines you need to know for Windows and maybe almost as many for Linux. There's plenty to learn at the command prompt because we spend so much time at the command prompt. I think a lot of us who are just getting into IT, we think everything is in that fancy Windows graphical user interface. And indeed, you can do pretty much anything you need from the Windows GUI. The problem is occasionally you will need to do some functions at the command prompt. For example, if you're troubleshooting a system that won't boot, there's no Windows user interface to use. You must work at the command prompt. So knowing these commands, what your options might be, and what these commands do can be very, very important to getting things back up and running. See if you know what the answer might be. All of the command prompts on this list, by the way, are listed in the exam objectives. So if you are going through this list and you don't recognize one of my answers, make sure you go back to your exam objectives. Make a note of it so that you can go back and study that topic, because it may not be the topic that was the right answer on this question. Maybe one of the wrong answers ends up being a question on your actual exam. So I try to fit a lot into a single question so that it not only becomes a question with an answer, it really becomes a question with 5 different topics that could potentially show up on your exam. And hopefully we're giving you some insight into how those might be used. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a technician is migrating several large directories over a high latency satellite WAN and requires a feature to resume the transfer if the connection drops. Which command line utility would be the best choice for this feature? Would it be xcopy, gp update/force, format/q, copy/v, or robocopy? It's not a robot. Stop doing that. Let's see how you answered this. 59% of you say the answer is robocopy. We have 20% that said the answer is gp update/force. And then it's all single digits. We have 9% that said copy/v, 7% that said Xcopy, and then 4% that said format/Q. Robocopy is what we chose in this particular case. Robocopy, as I mentioned, is not robot copy, although I see robot copy every time I see it. It's really robust. It is the robust copy. Now, why would we call a copy utility robust? We call it robust because the other copy utilities are not robust. The other two copy utilities that I have on this list, in fact, are Xcopy, which is a great copy command to use, especially if you're copying a lot of subdirectories. There's some great features inside Xcopy that can do that. Copy/V, commonly used to copy single files or groups of files at a time. The /V allows you to verify them once you've copied them. But those are great. But if you lose connectivity, you're copying this across a WAN, especially a WAN that is a satellite WAN with lots of latency. Maybe as it is right now outside the door of our studio, there's a lot of rain and a lot of clouds, and you tend to lose your connection to the satellite. Rain fade. You may have seen this with satellite television, for example, where when a storm comes through, the rain is so dense that you're not able to receive a signal from the satellite any longer. Works the same way in that scenario too. So Xcopy would not be able to resume if a rainstorm came by. You would have to start from the beginning again and resend these enormous files. That can take a lot of time. Same thing with copy. There's no way to restart this in the middle of a copy. And that's why robocopy is the best answer there, because it is a function inside of robocopy. There are a lot of functions inside of robocopy. It is a very capable copy command. But one of the great features inside of this is that it can resume if it happens to get interrupted in the middle of a copy. So great one to use over very slow wide area network links, over network connections, which can go up and down sometimes. Yesterday, about the time we would be normally doing a live stream, we didn't do a live stream yesterday, but I lost internet connectivity in the studio. It's only for 5 minutes or so, and I have now set up a failover to 5G. So I only lost connectivity for a few seconds, and then it picked up the 5G and I was back up and running again. It's an automatic process. But the other people in my neighborhood lost internet connectivity for about 5 minutes. So that's a scenario that would have caused Xcopy or copy to stop. It would not have worked properly, would have failed during that 5-minute period. And when the network came back up after that 5 minutes, robocopy would have continued the copy process. And that's one of the reasons why it would be great to use over this type of connection that is a high latency satellite wide area network, or anything else that might not be perfect for what we are doing. And indeed, 59% of you chose that option. You got that one absolutely correct. That is what we were looking for. GP Update is a group policy update utility. Group policy is that policy manager integrated into the Windows operating system so that the administrators on your network can set policies as to how you're able to use Windows on your laptop, on your desktop, or wherever you happen to use Windows. So they can configure it so that you can only uninstall applications. You can't install any new applications. Maybe they've set up a policy that sets a certain password complexity. Maybe they're configuring your Windows desktop so certain applications don't show up anymore. They have complete control over the operating system, and group policy is the functionality inside of Windows that allows that. GP Update allows the administrator to push those updates out once you've set a new policy so that all of those systems can now use that new group policy in their Windows configuration. But GP Update doesn't do anything with file transfers or resuming the transfer if the network happens to fail. 9% of you said copy, and I think now we know why copy and Xcopy, although very good, would not be the choice that we would use here. And then the format command is one that is used to prepare some media to be able to write information and store files on it. Whenever we receive like a USB drive, for example, most USB drives will be delivered to you with nothing on them. Sometimes you'll get a USB drive that is already formatted for Windows, but a USB drive coming right off the purchase, maybe you've opened the box and it does not have anything formatted on it. You will plug it in And your system will tell you, well, I don't know what this is. There's no formatting on it. There's no file system that's currently on that USB drive. So you would first need to format the USB drive, effectively creating a blank slate and a blank index, and then you're able to write files to that USB drive. That's commonly what we would use the format command to initialize some type of storage drive to be able to then store files on it. Has nothing to do with resuming transfer if your network connection happens to drop. The answer here, the one we were looking for, the one that would be the correct answer, is the one that 59% of you chose. That indeed is RoboCopy. Everybody who chose that one got it absolutely correct. I know we're at the top of the hour, but we have time for another question, right? Let's do another one. This next question, though, I'm going to pull from a different place. Some of you probably have been on the internet. You probably looked around at different questions that are out there, and maybe you ran into what I ran into, which was a lot of the questions on the internet, not the highest quality you could find. Not really the best stuff that's available for you. And when you're studying for an IT industry certification exam, there's not a lot of time for messing around with low quality study materials. So I thought, well, if there's no good questions out there, where could we find something that would have a similar tone and a similar style as the actual exam? Where would we find questions that were not only written by someone who knew what they were doing, but the answers were guaranteed to be correct because the person who created them is very familiar with the topics, something you don't always find in practice questions. I think we can agree with that one. So what I did was write my own practice exams book. I sure did. There it is. Practice exams, 380 pages of beautiful practice questions. There are 3 separate practice exams in here that are designed with the same distribution as the actual exam. So all of the domains of your exam have the same distribution that you have listed in your official exam objectives. Everything in this book is up to date and matches the exam objectives for the Core 2 exam. And all of, not just the questions, but the answers are all specific to the Core 2 exam. I guarantee it because I edit every single one of these questions. I make sure that they are written, and I go through and make sure that everything is up to date with the latest set of objectives. So I have for you today a question from my practice exams. Let's pull this up and have a look. This is question A35 from my Core 2 practice exams book. So from the very first exam of the A exam, question 35. This is on page 13 of the book. If you have the book, you could follow along. The question again, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. The question asks, when making configuration changes, a technician is assigned a temporary administrator password to use for the duration of the update. Once the administrator credentials are used, they are automatically deleted. Which of the following would best describe this process? Is it single sign-on, data loss prevention, user access console, or just-in-time access? So you get to choose these. And of course, this is a PDF. So if you have a stylus or you just want to use your mouse to be able to highlight different things that are here, maybe you think you know what the answer is, you can select it on the screen just to have something that you can mark this up. And of course, you're able to save this document. When you reload this document, all of your annotations are there. You don't lose anything. I don't lock anything down on this PDF to make it more difficult to use. It needs to be easier to use. And in fact, I did try to make this easier to use. You'll see that if you want to know the answer to this, if you just want to know whether it's A, B, C, or D, you need to go to page 33. If you want really a more detailed overview of the questions and the answers, you want to go to the details page, which is on page 73. We can see now I'm on page 13. To go to page 73, I'd have to scroll through this book. But what I did in my practice exams book, you'll notice when I highlight over the details, the cursor changes and it says it'll take me directly to that page. So let's click that, and it's now moved me to page 74. And I can see that the question is still there. When making configuration changes, it is single sign-on, data loss prevention, user access control, or just-in-time access. And you can see that I've said that the answer is D, just-in-time access. And I tell you why I think that is the right answer. Now that's good to a point, but a practice exams book is one where you will certainly be getting questions wrong. I certainly do when I'm going through practice questions because we're just learning the content. So I think the important part of any set of practice exams is not just telling you why the right answer is right. I think perhaps even more importantly is a book that tells you why the wrong answers are wrong. Because here's your chance to take what you thought was the right thing and then properly position that and understand more about that particular topic so that when you sit down for the actual exam, you will have studied all of those individual topics. And in fact, you'll see in this book, I list out every incorrect answer and I document why every single wrong answer is wrong so that you'll know why did I choose that as the wrong answer. And if you happen to think it was single sign-on, I explained to you that the single sign-on process prompts for authentication credentials once and then uses those credentials for a period of time without requiring any additional user input. Well, that wasn't the question that we had here. This was about getting a temporary administrator password. So that is one that is exactly why we see the single sign-on would not be correct. And I tell you why it would not be correct. And now you know more about single sign-on. Now you know that that's what the definition of single sign-on is, and you understand why it's not the right answer for this one. Same thing for data loss prevention, same thing for user access control. I also put into this list at the very bottom, this may be a situation where you read the question and you don't even understand if that's English. You don't even understand the words that are in the question. We've all been there. So what I did was put a link to the video that I used to create the question so that you can watch the video, get more information on the information that's on the topic that's being covered in this question, and then you can come back to the question and answer some of the things that are here. For example, in this case, this comes from the 2/20/12/02 exam, Objective 2.1, Authentication and Access. If you have the physical book, I include the QR code in here. So you can go to a page, got a QR code. You can scan that with your phone, and it will open up the video on your phone while you're physically reading through the book. There's also a quick link here if you'd like to type it in yourself, professormesser.link/1202-020-104, which is Objective 2.1, and it's video 4 that is in that list. Not a secret. It's not something that you have to worry about there, but the link is right there for you. Now, once you're done with this question, now let's go back to where we were. In this case, I'm in a PDF on page 73. I need to go back to page 13. Well, just like your browser, your PDF reader has a back button right here at the top. So I'm going to use my back button. We'll click that, click, and now we're back to where we started on page 13. And now I can go back to the next question that is in my list and just keep this process going over and over again. That is my practice exams book. If you think this is something that might help you, you might want to have a look at that. It's on my website at professormesser.com/core2pe. And if you get both the course notes and the practice exams, you get also a little bit of a cost break. We give you a little bit of a discount when you get both of those. And why wouldn't you? We appreciate you doing that. We want to give you a little bit back for making that investment. We think they are tools that can help you get through this A+ exam, help you with your studies, and get you to where you need to be and get you A+ certified. Learn more about those practice exams at professormesser.com/core2pe. This whole time, I have been talking about the official exam objectives. I've said it over and over and over and over again. And the reason I say it over and over and over again, it is one of the most valuable study tools you can have in your list, and it's free. There's no cost to downloading these exam objectives. They are a great checklist to read through before you start your studies. They're a great checklist when you're done with your studies to see if you're really ready to take the exam. The exam objectives are available on the CompTIA website. I've got a link on my site that will take you over there. It gives you an explanation about what the exam is and breaks down the different domains. I mentioned earlier that my practice exam book follows the same distribution as the objectives. That is the distribution I'm talking about. Domain 1 is 28% of the exam. Domain 2 is also 28% of the exam. Domain 3 is software troubleshooting, 23% of the exam. And operational procedures is 21% of the exam. And so my questions have the same distribution in my practice exams book. And then the good part, all of the other pages are a bullet by bullet full breakdown of every possible topic that could appear on your exam. Everything. CompTIA sticks to this list like glue. So if you go through and you know every single one of these bullets, you can explain to yourself or someone else what the various file system types of NTFS, REFS, FAT32, ext4, XFS, APFS, and exFAT. You can make that comparison between those. Then you can check those off your list and go to the next bullets. Same thing for section 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, 1.5. We're not even through the first domain yet. There's a lot of bullets on this screen. Let's go to the next page. More bullets from domain 1 all the way to domain section 1.11. And then section 2, you can see all the bullets for domain 2. Another set of pages for domain 2. More bullets for domain 3. More bullets for domain 4. And a little bit more to finish up domain 4. A lot in there to be able to work through. And if you're someone who is trying to get through the exam and trying to understand, am I really ready? This is the document for you. As I mentioned, it's free. You can download it with links that are available at professormesser.com/objectives. A great thing to have available if you're starting your studies or finishing your studies. There's some good intel in there. It could make or break your score on this exam. Very important to have that there. We do one of these study groups for A+ every month. We actually do 2 for A+. We do 1 for Network Plus and 1 for Security Plus every month. You've just finished up your first hour of our core, you can see on here, Core 2 study group on the 7th. We have a Network Plus study group coming up on the 12th. Haven't written those questions yet. I need to get to work on that one. So that's what I'm doing this weekend, is preparing for that Wednesday study group. And then a week after that, on the 19th of August, is our Security Plus study group. If you'd like to join us for the next A+ study group, I've already scheduled those for September on the 1st and 3rd of September. We have Network Plus on the 9th of September and Security Plus on the 16th. So we're already stretching these out. Hopefully we have a date here that works for you. But of course, we record and archive all of these on our YouTube channel. If you miss any of these, or you'd like to go back in time a number of years to be able to watch our study groups, they are all there and available for you. Maybe there's some Q&A there that can help you with your studies. Well, our first hour and then some is now done, but stick around. We're not finished yet. I want to take your questions. So if you have a question for me, you can submit that question at any time by going to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. A little tab at the top of your screen allows you to submit a question that I will answer in the second hour. So stick around for that coming up immediately afterwards. You don't have to go anywhere. You don't have to do anything. I'll put up a screen for a couple seconds, and then we'll go right into the after show. We also have our course notes and practice exams. If that's something you think might help you for your studies, you can find out more about those at professormesser.com/1202success. We also have, of course, our discounted vouchers, including our exclusive Exam Hacks ebook. That's available at professormesser.com/vouchers. And thank you so much for your support with these vouchers. They help keep this entire process going and hopefully give you a little bit of a discount so that you can take your exam, but not spend quite as much money when you're taking your exam, which is nice. And of course, if you're on social media, we are also on social media. We put our daily pop quiz questions out on our social media sites. We like to answer questions that are out there as well. You can find us at professormesser.com/ the name of the site you would like to find us, /Discord, /X, /LinkedIn, /YouTube, /Facebook, /Instagram. You get the idea. You know exactly what we're doing. So of course, you can go over there and find us and the things that we are doing with that as well. Well, that brings us to the end of our first hour, but stick around for the after show. We got a lot more questions coming up. You can submit those. We're going to go through those, answer anything you might have, and see if what's top of mind for you. Thank you so much for joining us in this first hour. We will see you next time on the A+ study group. Okay, I'm going to take a sip. So good. Okay, let's bring up pretty pictures of me because everybody wants that, right? That's way too many. What is going on? Okay, that's better. That was a little bit intense there for a moment. But now it's the after show. Now it's the part where, to be fair, I have not done any type of prep. It's not entirely true. There's a little bit of prep that goes on, but I don't know what questions you're going to ask. So I would like to find out what that is. If you would like to submit a question, you can absolutely do that at any time by going to this link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. That is exactly where you go to submit those questions. You will not see them appear on your screen immediately. They go into a queue on my side, and then I sift through those to find the questions that you might have. So we got ways to kind of work along those lines. There's a lot to go through, and let's see what type of questions that you might have put in here for me. Let's start with a question that is more of a logistical question. This is from John, and John asks, okay, for A+, you got Core 1 and you got Core 2. So John has asked, do you have to do Core 1 first before you do Core 2? A perfectly valid question, especially if you're trying to, maybe you want to get the hard one done first. Maybe you want to get the easy one done first. I guess there's a couple of ways to approach that particular strategy. But because there are 2 exams, CompTIA does not care what order you take them in. It doesn't care which one you pass first. It doesn't care which one you pass second. All it cares about is that you pass both exams from the same exam series before the 2 exams are retired. So in this particular case, in fact, I probably have that slide we can bring up real quick. One moment, please. Right at the top, I gave you that overview on the Core 1 exam. And that overview had this information that said the Core 1 and Core 2 exams we expect will retire somewhere around September 2028. There's where it is. So September 2028, you need to complete your Core 1, you need to pass Core 1, you need to pass Core 2, both of those before September of 2028. Now, as we sit here in August of 2026, you got plenty of time. Usually it's an average of around 2 to 3 months per exam for most people, but this is one where you've got years available. You have plenty of time. So you get to decide which one you take first and which one you take second. That's a pretty good problem to have, I guess. The way that many people will approach this is they want to do something that's familiar to them first. Give them some momentum. Start with an exam that they're at least familiar with, but there's no way to know which one of those applies to you. So many people have been using Windows for a very long time. Maybe you've even been in a role where you've been a Windows administrator. You're very familiar with the Windows front end. Maybe you've done a little bit of Linux. So in that particular case, maybe Core 2 would be a better exam to take first because it's something you're familiar with. Now, if you're someone who has built your own computers, maybe you build gaming systems, maybe you retrofit cooling systems inside of your computer, you've replaced your own memory, you've worked a lot with your displays and the configurations of those. If that's the case, maybe Core 1 is a better choice. Ultimately, you have to take both exams, of course. Both of these exams have hundreds and hundreds of topics that you have to know. So there's not one exam or another that I would consider easier or harder than another. That's a common question I get is, which one's easier? Just tell me which one's easier. I'll take that one first. The problem is that everybody has a different experience level. Everybody has worked with different things with IT. So what may be difficult for you might be super easy for someone else. So it's hard to tell someone which one's the easiest. I would say from a difficulty perspective, both of the exams have a similar difficulty level. So if we were looking, if this was an Olympic sport, it would be the same difficulty level as one dive has the same difficulty level as another. Even though they are different dives, from a difficulty level, they're about the same. And that's about what we get with the 2 exams as well. I don't think that the Core 2 is written to be harder than the Core 1. I don't think the Core 1 has been written harder than the Core 2. I think they're pretty much the same as far as difficulty level goes. So it's really up to you. Take both of them. They can be in any order. Just make sure you get both of them done before September of 2028 or whenever that retirement date ultimately ends up. That's what you want to do. That's the best way to go about this. If it doesn't matter to you, it really doesn't matter to CompTIA either. Just decide which one you want to take first. Take that one. I would recommend, though, focusing on a single exam at a time. A lot of people will come to me and say, well, I sat down and took both of my exams today and I didn't pass either of them, or I only passed one of them. And of course, my response to them is, why are you taking both exams at the same time? You don't have to do that. In fact, we highly, highly, highly recommend you do not do that. That's not what you want to do. I think some people may be under the misguided perception that you have to take both of the exams at one time. Oh, no, 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 you do not. And there is no time frame between exams that you have to stick to. You just have to get both of them done before the exam series is retired. That's the only thing you have to worry about. So take one exam at a time, study for one of them, pick one of them, and then just study for that exam. Once you take that exam and pass it, then you can kind of forget everything while you go take the other exam. You're not going to forget everything, of course, but the exams don't tend to overlap a lot. So you're going to be learning all new content when you start studying for that second exam. So something to consider what the challenges might be with this. I think both of them are pretty much the same. There's not much difference there. In fact, if it was me, I would think Core 1 would be easier, but for other people that have worked with Windows and Linux for so long, maybe Core 2 would be easier for them. So I don't think that the scoring or the perspective of other people really matters at this point. I think it's more about what you know and where you would go with it. Let's take some more questions from you. If you'd like to submit a question, you can do it at any time. Go to the link on your screen, professormesser.com/QA, and lock in your question for me. If it's something that we think is useful that we can use, we will absolutely bring that and show it to everybody and talk about those topics. Let's keep going through. Speaking of logistics, also from John and the two different exams you deal with, this is a nice follow-up. Once you pass both of these exams, is it automatic that you're now A+ certified? Or do you have to send in something else or fill out a form or tell somebody you passed both of them or whatever it happens to be? It's all automatic. So you take the Core 1, you take the Core 2. When you start setting up the exam, you start working through it. In fact, maybe we'll go to the CompTIA website. You want to go log into the CompTIA website, login.comptia.org, and be able to log in. I'm going to go through the login process on my side, and we're going to look at the screen that comes up after you log in. So it takes you to CompTIA Central. So I went to login.comptia.org. I've got a few training classes on mine. I go through quite a bit on my CompTIA. But the thing I wanted to show you was on this main page on the right side, manage exams. That's where you want to go. And you can schedule and manage your exams right here. So that's where you would go to set up and schedule all of these. And it goes through, I'm not going to show you my details on this one, but I think that's one where you can learn a lot about these exams by going through the setup process and going through and register and find out what's there. Once you do that, you're logged into your CompTIA account. So when you schedule your first exam, it's associated with your account. When you schedule your second exam, it's also connected to your account. So when you pass both of them, CompTIA automatically knows you're one person who passed both of those exams. You are now A+ certified, and it will show you immediately on your login that you indeed are A+ certified. So that's the way that they determine that. Now, there are people, in fact, I think I saw someone posted on Reddit recently in the CompTIA subreddit that they took their first exam with one email address and account. They took their second exam with a different email address associated with a different CompTIA account. But they passed both of them, but neither account is telling them that they are A+ certified because those two accounts are unlinked. The problem was the time they took their first exam, they used their school email. Well, now they're out of school and they no longer have access to that. So they had to open up a new account. So now they have this sort of mixed up, unable to see the other exam type scenario online. If that's the case, you simply need to go to help.comptia.org, open up a ticket, give them a call, say that I passed both exams. I have two different accounts. Can we merge those together? And they can merge them together for you. I've done that myself with CompTIA. So they know how to do that. They can figure out those details. They'll confirm that it's you on both of those, and they'll merge those together so that you can truly be A+ certified. let's keep going through the questions that you have submitted to me. Lots here to go through. Thank you for doing this. This is a pretty common question, and it's something to maybe consider as you're going through this process. This is from JJ. Hey, JJ. It says, hello, Professor Messer. I passed A+ and Network Plus and acquired a stackable certification. And that stackable certification is the CompTIA IT Operations Specialist. Can I add this certification on my resume? Well, there is the question, isn't it? Let's talk about stackable certifications. CompTIA stackable. We're going to type this in so we can see the CompTIA website because there's a lot of them. CompTIA has an article on their site talking about their stackable certifications and how they fit together. CompTIA released these a number of years ago, and I think some people may not even realize they're here. For example, if you pass the CompTIA A+ and CompTIA Linux Plus, you are a CompTIA System Support Specialist, a CSSS. I guess that's what that is. I will not do that again. If you passed I think we just saw that one where we passed our A+ and our Network Plus. Is it even in this list? I'm having a problem finding all of this. If you pass the A+, Network Plus, and Security Plus, you have earned the CompTIA Secure Infrastructure Specialist, or the CSIS. Now, you may be saying to yourself, wow, there's a lot here. There's how many stackables are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 stackables here. And you may even be thinking to yourself, there's 12 of these, and I haven't heard of any of these before. And that is not an unusual thing because these stackable certifications were released a couple of years ago, about 3 or 4 years ago now. These stackable certifications aren't widely known. And this is in many ways a bit of a challenge because if you're trying to get a job, you want to tell the prospective employer that you are familiar with these topics and that you have earned the certifications that prove that you know what you're talking about. The problem will be that many of the employers don't know of these stackable certifications. So let's say in this scenario that you have earned a stackable certification by passing your A+ and Network Plus, and you are CompTIA IT Operations Specialist, according to that stackable cert. If I was putting this on my resume, I would certainly put CompTIA IT Operations Specialist because you have earned that. That is a legitimate title, and you can absolutely put that on your resume. But nobody's going to know that you passed your A+, and nobody's going to know that you've earned your Network Plus. So if you are planning to put the stackable title on there, I would absolutely require that you also include CompTIA A+ certified, CompTIA Network Plus certified on separate lines so that the automated process that scans your resume finds those keywords and gives you points for earning those certs. I don't know if every one of those automated processes will have any idea what a CompTIA IT Operations Specialist even is, and it might just discount it or ignore it completely. So yes, you can absolutely put those stackables there. You've earned them. They're good. They are supported by CompTIA. But you also want to be sure that if you're putting this on a resume, that you are properly representing your knowledge. So make sure you physically spell out all of the individual certifications that you have learned as well. And I think in that way, you're safe either way you go. Should be an important thing to keep in mind when you start working through these problems. I think the resumes are a challenge in there. There's a science unto itself, isn't it? Trying to make sure you get the perfect resume. I think that's one of those scenarios where you want to make sure you cover all your bases, regardless of what it happens to be. And maybe it's a good talking point. If you get to the point where you're in some type of interview, you could at least talk to that stackable certification if it happens to come up. Okay. Let's keep going through this list. There are, such good questions on here. There's too many good questions. Thank you for submitting these. Keep pulling them in to have them there. Let's talk about some of the topics on the Core 2 exam. This is from Zachary, who says, what do you think is the best way to learn/memorize all the command line information for both Windows and Linux to prepare for the Core 2 exam? As I mentioned earlier in the study group, there are a lot of command lines on this exam, a lot. And I'm going to pull up my list of command lines that I have in the official exam objectives. Let's scroll over, scroll. Let's keep going through this list. And let's look at the first set. So section 1.5 is given a scenario, use the appropriate Microsoft command line tools. And here are all the command line tools you need to know for the Windows operating system. CD, dir, ipconfig, ping, netstat, nslookup, netuse, trace, pathping, check disk, format, disk part, md, rmdir, robocopy, hostname, netuser, winver, who am I? Woohoo. Command name / question mark. We've got OS management with GP update, GP result, and SFC. Those are all the command line tools you need to know for Windows. The second part of this question was then, how do I learn these? Well, in our video, I go through every single one of these commands and I demonstrate them at the command prompt. So that would be a good place to start. But you can always go to your machine and try some of these things. If you're worried about creating a problem, you can always create a virtual machine, install Windows on that virtual machine, and then use the command lines in the VM, which is a very safe way to do it. That way, it doesn't matter what you do on your virtual machine. You're not affecting your primary computer, your production device, and making sure that works that way. But that's just Windows. No, we're not even done. That's just the Windows command line. Let's keep going to the next page, section 1.9. Identify common features and tools of the Linux client/desktop operating system. Look at all these. You thought Windows had a lot of commands here. This is a lot. All the file management commands, file system management, administrative commands, package management, networking, informational commands, text editors, configuration files and their locations, OS components, and what a root account might be. So most of these are command lines and things we need to know, all the way up to the text editors. A lot that's there. And we have to know all of those as well. Same scenario, though. Go to our video. We actually have 2 videos because there were so many of these on Linux commands. I demonstrate every single one of the Linux commands. You can do the same. Start up a Linux virtual machine on your computer and just go through all of these. If you are already running Mac OS, then you're probably already familiar with a lot of these. Every single one of these commands, I think all of them, practically all of them, are in Mac OS. There's a couple that are not. I don't think that DNF or apt are in Mac OS because Mac OS is based on Unix and not Linux. And although they're similar in many ways, there is a difference. And that is why you will see some commands for one type of similar operating system and different commands on something that you think would be pretty much the same, but are very different. That's one of the challenges, I think, not just of differences between Linux and Mac OS. Those are challenges between different Linux distributions as well. Just one of those things you just have to become familiar with as you're working through the Linux operating system. But I would recommend opening up a virtual machine, installing Linux on that virtual machine. And if you haven't done that already, you really should do that anyway. You need to be more familiar with using VMs, installing a virtual machine, managing the virtual machine process, and starting with something like VMware's workstation, or using maybe one of the more open source or freely available hypervisors that are out there. VirtualBox is a great example. There's others out there as well. Find the one that you're comfortable with, that you like, load up that hypervisor, and then install some virtual machines on your computer. That's a great thing to do this weekend. It's a great way to get some good hands-on practical experience and things that you can use not only for your local computer, but use for your career as well. Those are the commands and the things you need to know for both Windows and Linux. And yeah, there's a lot there. And if you are planning for both of those, just stick to that list. Do not go outside the scope of that command list, because as I mentioned, the commands and all of the bullets listed in the official exam objectives, that is the core of what you need to know. And CompTIA does not go outside the scope of that list. That is the scope for the actual exam. They stick to that list. They're not going to somehow ask you a question about a Linux command you've never heard of before. They're not going to give you a scenario where you have to use a Windows command that you've never heard of before, because they stick to the objectives. So don't be distracted by third parties that are telling you something else. Stick to the objectives. The objectives is where you need to be. So I think that's the best way to go about finding and studying for those command lines, and really any of the topics that are listed in the official exam objectives. Let's keep going through the list of things that you have. We've got a lot here to go through. Let's see what questions. How are we on time, by the way? Usually I have my clock up, and I do not. We could have gone for hours because I wasn't paying attention. Let's find out what your next question is on this list. It would be good if I could bring up that next question. Thanks for submitting these, by the way. Some great questions that are coming. You can, of course, continue to submit them into that list. I will keep reading through them as we go. So let's go back to performance-based questions real quick, and how we should prepare for performance-based questions. This is from Preston, who asks, are there any resources to help study for performance-based questions, and how to avoid being stuck or freeze up on them? I think you might be overthinking what a performance-based question is. First, you do not have to worry about being stuck or worrying about freezing up. That's not an issue. Performance-based questions are just another way to ask you about information that normally would be in a multiple choice question, quite honestly. Let's take an example of that. I mean, I'm saying it kind of flippantly, but I don't mean to, but I want to give you an example of what I mean when I say that. So let's go back to the questions I posed earlier. I'm just going to bring this up on my screen. I'm going to try to anyway. We can do it. Here we go. This poor machine. So I gave you a performance-based question as part of the study group earlier, and this was it. You're an IT support technician helping Pegasus Construction Services. You're upgrading the physical security of your site. Select the best security control for each incident. Now, this is a single performance-based question, but nothing in this question, first, it's not difficult to understand what you need to do. It's very straightforward. All of the topics listed in this question are directly from your exam objectives. For example, I'm going to bring up exam objectives for security. I'm going to go to that page I'm going to say that I'm going to go to that page in the exam objectives. There it is. Section 2.1, summarize various security measures and their purposes. There's physical security right here. So all of those things that I just gave you on that page, there they are. It's not like I made this up. It's not like there was some mystery in what we were getting. There was no uncertainty as to what was being asked. Those are the topics, black and white, specifically labeled and written in the official exam objectives. And you can kind of do this for every grouping of bullets that are in the exam objectives. If you wanted to have a performance-based question on biometrics, there's all the topics that you could use for a question on biometrics. So first, you should be aware that there's nothing that's going to come across in these performance-based questions that will be weird, unusual, or foreign to you. You will be very clear on the topics. You will recognize them. They will be familiar to you. You will understand exactly what those topics are referring to because you've already studied the exam objectives. So the other part of this, the thing I said earlier, is this is really just a bunch of multiple choice questions all bundled together. And in many of these performance-based questions, that's exactly what it is. I could have had a single multiple choice question that said, a delivery driver accidentally pressed the accelerator instead of the brake while facing the building's glass entrance and created a security issue. What things could we have used to prevent this from occurring? Would it be A, access control vestibule, B, badge reader, C, equipment locks, or D, bollards? Multiple choice question. So that's effectively what we have here. Now, not all performance-based questions are quite as linear as that, as delineated directly back to or in a style of multiple choice as that one is. But this one certainly lends itself that way, and many of them are in that way. You could find a way to make it into a multiple choice question. So that's why I say don't worry about studying the structure of a performance-based question. There's no way to do that because it is effectively an unlimited number of structures. Performance-based questions are simply a question that is not multiple choice. That opens us up for an unlimited number of functions, formats, styles, and question types. That is not something you can easily study for, and you shouldn't. We don't study this way for multiple choice questions. Let's study the format of a multiple choice question that we can be prepared for. Well, they'll give us a scenario in the first sentence, then they give us a definition in the second sentence, and in the third sentence, they ask for something. We never do that. So why are you doing that with performance-based questions? It doesn't help you because you have no idea what these performance-based questions are going to look like. And I think that's the problem that most people run into. It's that fear of the unknown. It's the fear of what's really going to show up on our exam. And that's a real fear. I get you. I'm right there. Fear of the unknown stops me so many times. I've had to work very hard to get over the idea of stopping when I have a fear of the unknown. You have to push through that. And what overwhelmingly the feedback that I get after people take their exam is, why did I worry so much about performance-based questions? They were very straightforward. In most cases, I knew exactly what they were asking for. And here's the line I always get at the end. They were much easier than I thought they were going to be. I know. Because we have such a worry and a fear that they're going to be some insurmountable thing. And people have talked about how this was the part of their exam that was the make or break for them. When in reality, we really don't think performance-based questions have quite the impact on your score as we think they do. And we don't have specifics. We don't have actual numbers because CompTIA doesn't share those actual numbers. But we certainly have a lot of stories that people have told us about their exam, and I have no reason to doubt the stories that I've received. A good example is one where someone was taking their exam. They skipped over the performance-based questions because they're right at the beginning of the exam. They read through them, then they just skip it. You can skip questions on the CompTIA exams and then come back to those questions later. Doesn't work that way on Cisco exams. On Cisco exams, when you go to the next question, you can't go back. You're done. But CompTIA, you could jump around to any question at any time. So that's what a lot of people will do is they'll skip over the performance-based questions at the beginning. They'll go all the way through the multiple choice questions at that point. There might be 80 of those, 85 of those. And then they come back and finish up the performance-based questions at the end. The thing that, the story that I was getting from someone was they sat down on the exam, they skipped over the questions, they went through all the multiple choice, and then they circled back to the performance-based questions. But before they could answer anything in the very first performance-based question, they ran out of time. And admittedly, they said, I wasn't paying attention to the clock, even though it's on the screen the whole time. I didn't do any type of time management. That's on me. So the exam ended. And when the exam ends based on time, it calculates what your score is based on everything that you answered up to that point. And in that particular case, for that person, they passed. They passed, but they didn't answer any of the performance-based questions. Now, let me be clear. I'm not recommending you do that. That's not a great idea. That is not your best possible chance for passing, is just dismissing the performance-based questions. That is not the story. That's not the moral we're trying to get across to you here. What we want you to do is understand that they don't have quite the impact on your score that I think a lot of people think that they do. I've had people tell me, well, the performance-based questions are worth so much more than the multiple choice. I say, what? Hold on. Where'd you get that from? Why are you thinking that's the case? Well, it just seems like they would be, but are they? And the reality of this is nobody really knows. I don't know. You don't know. Nobody's taking the exam knows because CompTIA doesn't share their scoring. So we're all, in many cases, worrying about something that's not true, which is why I try to bring actual instances, actual exam sittings, and what people experienced as the truth to this. That's kind of all we have to be able to calculate or understand how how valid or important these performance-based questions are. Now, certainly, CompTIA could change this in the future. Maybe they make it so that it's all performance-based questions. That would be awful, but they could. But they haven't. And I don't think they've really changed any of the scoring either. I haven't really gotten any feedback from people saying, oh, it's very different now. I'm failing much more. We're seeing a lot more failures. We're not seeing any changes at all. So I really think if I had to guess, I would say performance-based questions, they might be worth the same as a multiple choice question. They might be worth less than a single multiple choice question. And the multiple choice questions, of course, are worth different numbers of points depending on the question. So you can't even look at one single multiple choice question and know how many points it is because it's different for every question you get. That part we do know, but we just don't know what those numbers are. So if anybody tells you straight up, no, performance-based questions, they're totally more points. We know this for a fact. No, they don't. Nobody knows this for a fact. They don't. It's an interesting guess. It's an interesting argument. It's a fine argument. We can talk about what that is, but I just don't see it in the evidence. I don't see anyone that is not passing an exam because they did badly just on performance-based questions. Almost certainly when people say, I failed my exam because of performance-based questions, what I hear is, I passed my exam because of both performance-based questions and a bad showing on the multiple choice side. Now, one of the things that can really help you with this and maybe qualify some of the things I'm saying is CompTIA provides you with a report after your exam. And in that report, they tell you your score and they break down for you all of the topics you got wrong. So this might be a way that you're able to understand the things you missed on the exam. They don't give you a lot of details. For example, they might tell you you missed 2 questions in section 2.3, compare and contrast wireless security protocols and authentication methods. But that whole section covers WPA2, WPA3, TKIP, AES, Radius, TACX, Kerberos, and multi-factor authentication. So you don't know which 2 questions you got wrong. All you know is the 2 questions you got wrong had something to do with one of the topics, 2 of the topics, I guess. I guess it could be one of the topics in this section. Maybe you got the same topic. Maybe there were 2 questions about radius and you got both of them wrong. So you don't know. You're just not sure. But that can give you at least a little bit of insight if you're trying to make a determination on where should I study for next time. That's an important document. That will tell you where were you weakest. Was it on the security side? Was it on the operating system side? Was it on the troubleshooting side? You'll see very plainly in that list. And what you'll certainly be able to tell is it's more than just performance-based questions. I missed some multiple choice questions in here. Had I gotten those right, we might have passed even with the scoring that we did on the performance-based questions. So that's another example. I know it's a bullet point that is not, it's a qualitative bullet point. There's no quantitative values I can apply to this. It is all stories that we tell about how the exam went that we're compiling and getting an inference from. So, and these things might change over time. What we know today might be different tomorrow, but CompTIA, if anything, has been very good at keeping things consistent through these exams. So rarely do we see dramatic changes with how these exams are graded, how these exams are scored. It's one of those scenarios. So keep that in mind if you're someone who's working through your exam. Don't worry about finding performance-based question resources, I guess. Now, you could go through multiple performance-based questions. We have 15 of them in our practice exams book, for example. There are 15 performance-based questions in here, 5 in each of the 3 exams. So that might be a good place to start. You can go through replays of our study groups. Our study groups have a new performance-based question every time. So that's one of those scenarios. You just need to not worry about the structure, worry about what the question is about. And if you know the content, if you understand the exam objectives, it really doesn't matter how they ask the question. You will know the answer. So it's one of those scenarios. I often say that CompTIA doesn't use fill in the blanks on their exam, but if they did, you could answer a fill in the blank. You know, as long as the fill in the blanks one, it's very obvious what question, what the answer is they were looking for. So it doesn't matter how the question is being asked. You just need to know the content. So my best recommendation for you, stop studying exam structure, start studying all of the content. Know all of the bullets from the exam objectives. You're going to do fine. You will be great on this exam. You won't have to worry about any of those other pieces. We're getting close to the top of the hour, so let me fit in a couple of extra questions as we go. This is a common question I get, and I wish I could answer it in a way that would make any sense for anyone, but I think we can see the sort of the logical breakdown here. The question asks, does your practice exams, together with your YouTube videos, guarantee a pass in the A+ exams? Well, no, of course not. Nothing guarantees a pass. Nothing. However, we have built our entire video course to cover every topic from the CompTIA exam objectives. There they are. Those topics are everything that's on the exam. That is the list that I use to build the videos. So it's a perfect one-to-one match with what CompTIA is expecting. All of the questions in my practice exams book are built around those videos and those exam objectives. In fact, I list the exam objective after every question in this book. So I will tell you, nothing will guarantee a pass, but I will guarantee that all of my videos, all of my course notes, all of my practice exams, and all of the training materials that I create are directly related to topics that are clearly documented in the official CompTIA exam objectives. For some reason, other books, other video courses, and other training courses that you'll find out there don't have that same level of visibility or directedness to those objectives. They don't stick to that list. And I don't know why, because CompTIA does. So I want to be sure that you're covering everything from the exam. I want to be sure that you're covering every single topic, every single bullet, everything that could be in there. And so we stick to that list. It's sort of a mantra of what we do here. Every piece of training materials we create are all tied back to an official exam objective. And we stick to that. We don't go outside that scope because CompTIA doesn't go outside that scope. And so we stick to what you know. I think that my course with the course notes and the videos and the practice exams, maybe even some things labs you can get from CompTIA. We have the CompTIA labs discounted on our site, for example. Find as many study materials as you need. The goal is not to use as few study materials as possible and pass. The goal is to use as many study materials as possible and pass this exam. Do not limit yourself to one specific type of study material. You should study as many as you possibly can. That's the goal. And we built our course to be a standalone course covering every topic. We built our practice exams to cover the bulk of these topics that you're going to find. In fact, probably have more than a few cases in here that we're covering everything from the exam, especially when you consider the wrong answers. There's a lot of information in these documents, and we designed them that way. So nothing guarantees a pass. No, it'd be a foolish thing to say that you're guaranteed to pass. I think you've got a very good chance of passing because we give you all the tools you need to then be able to pass the exam. The rest of this is up to you. You have to do the hard part. I'm doing the easy part. I'm giving you everything you could possibly need, spelling it out for you, and giving you a way to walk into that room to be very secure and very confident in knowing these materials. And that's the best place you can be when you're ready to take one of these exams. We have time for more questions. Let's keep going through our list and see what we have. There's a lot of questions, and thank you for sending these questions in, by the way, and making that happen. There is, from Preston, we were talking about this earlier. When renewing your certification, do you have to retake the exams again, or is it something else? This is a good question if you're in the renewal part of this, or you're already thinking you've already passed the exams in your brain. You're already A+ certified, so how can we renew this thing? Now, taking the exams again, you'd have to take a newer version of the exam. Once you take the 1201 and you pass it, and you take the 1202 and pass it, you can't take those exams again. You already passed them. CompTIA does not allow you to take those exams once you pass them the first time. But if they came out with a new series of exams in September of 2028 or whenever it's going to be, and it's the 1301 and the 1302, the next version, whatever they end up calling it, well, then you could take those to renew your certification. Oh, but why would you do that? That is probably the hardest way to renew a cert. It's not even a renewal, really, is it? You're just taking the exams again. That would certainly renew a certification, sure. There are much easier ways to renew your cert. On the CompTIA website, I'll show you on the CompTIA website. There we go. Go to the resources link on the CompTIA website, and you want to view all resources. And there's a section in there for everything, pretty much everything they have in this list. One of these is continuing education. So that's the one you're looking for, continuing education. Let's learn more about that one. And it talks all about the renewal process. And it says there's lots of ways to renew. You could choose your renewal path as a single activity. That might be CompTIA CertMaster CE. That's a very good way to do it. You could renew with multiple activities. We talked earlier today about continuing education unit credits. So if you attend a training class, you go to an industry meeting, you do your own training, you take you do work experience, you publish blog posts. All of these things count. They're like points you can accumulate. That's what these CEUs are. So you accumulate CEUs until you get to, I think for A+, you have to have what, 20 or 25 CEUs to renew. So that you need that many. So you have to take a number of different things. You have to do a number of different tasks, get all those points together, submit those to CompTIA, and you've also renewed. This is pretty good. That means that there could be things that you are doing at work or at school that you do day to day, that you do all the time, that might actually give you CEUs. So you might end up being able to renew without doing anything. Just pay your renewal fee, your maintenance fee, and you're now renewed for another 3 years. Makes it easy. And then there are also other ways. They have other options in here as well, depending on what you're doing. So they have a big list of activities on their website of things you can do and how it applies to different exams. Plenty to read through on the CompTIA website. Have a look at their renewal process. If I don't have it in this video, so Lori, as you are watching this, remind me to check the YouTube video description. I do have a video on how to renew your A+, Network Plus, or Security Plus certification in just a few hours. It focuses on the CertMaster CE, but I also go through all of these other methods, and I give you the advantages and disadvantages of each one of those methods so that you can decide which one fits best for you. There's different costs, different time constraints, different requirements. So you can watch that video and get more details on it. And if it's not on my YouTube video description, I'll add that in there so that we can find all of that and answer those questions. Not very difficult to renew. It's in many ways more difficult to read through the renewal process than it is to actually renew. And taking the exams is an option, but it's the worst option for renewing. But a lot of people do it, and you can certainly do it as well, and it would renew your certification. Really, you're getting a new cert at that point to break those down. Let's keep going through our list of things that we have here. So here's, I get this question a lot about my practice exams and working through them. Zachary says, when we're taking practice exams, either the ones you have made or other ones, well, I can only talk about the ones I've made. I have no idea how other people write their exams or score them. How do you recommend we score them to get an accurate idea of if we're ready for the actual exam? Well, this is probably one of my frequently asked questions. So in the book itself, and let's go over to our practice exams book. Just going to bring this up so we can see. Here's the practice exams front. Let's go to just in here in the introduction. I have a section on how to use this book. And then once we get past that section, how to score the practice exams. And I give you a breakdown of how I would score it. I tend to focus on an all or nothing scenario where if you get the question right, that's a point. If you get the question wrong, that's not a point. There you go. Now, some people will say, well, performance-based questions, you might get half of them right, and you might get half of them wrong. So could I give myself partial credit? I mean, I guess you could. The goal of my practice exams book is not to emulate the scoring that is used on the CompTIA exam. As I mentioned earlier, there's no way to do that anyway. Nobody knows how they score their exam. And I would think that it's not your goal either. You're not here to figure out and somehow reverse engineer the scoring process for the exam. Ultimately, you're never going to know that ever in your life. This is like a mystery of the universe. Where did we come from? How did the Big Bang happen? How did they score CompTIA exams? All of these things, you will go to your deathbed never knowing the answer to them. So just become comfortable with that. This, however, though, at least gives you a feel. If you do it 1 point for every question that's in here, you at least have a pretty good idea, a barometer of where you are in the knowledge process. And that's all we're trying to do with practice exams. We're not trying to tell you if you get 70 questions right, you're failed. If you get 71 questions right, you've passed. Doesn't work that way. All we're doing is giving you an understanding of how well you're working through these problems and how much of these topics you really understand. My goal is for you to get 100% of these correct. That doesn't make sense either. But you need to be pushing to get that much knowledge. Everything that's in this book is written based on the exam objectives anyway. So that's exactly what we're trying to do here. That is certainly a goal. I do give you, though, at least some ideas of what I think would be good numbers. So in the book, I tell you, if you get less than 63 questions correct, which on a percentage basis would be 70% and lower, you're not ready. Now, if you get over 81 questions correct, which is over 90%, you're spot on. Well, maybe you got less than that. Maybe you got 80 to 90%. Well, it's pretty good, and maybe you are ready, but you do better to get 90% right. So I at least give you something you can look at. You can set a bar, you can put a line in the sand, and you can figure out where you want to be while you're playing in that sandbox. That is a good guess. It is a good sort of measurement. At least you've got a red, yellow, green type scenario that you can go with. I'm not intending this to be a one-to-one representation numbers wise as to what you will see on an actual exam, because again, there's no way for myself or anyone else in the world to know how to have any type of relationship to the actual exam numbers. It simply can't be done. So I give you something pretty close. And I think these numbers have worked well through the years. These books have been published for over 10 years now, and I update them every time. We have a new exam series, so you know you're getting the most recent content, but the numbers have been pretty solid this whole time. If CompTIA skews this one way or the other, I will change the books, but there hasn't been any need to. As I mentioned, CompTIA does stay relatively consistent in the things that they are providing to us, including the exam scoring. So we haven't had to change anything associated with that. We just stick to kind of the broad description of the exam and the numbers. And I think that's probably a good way to focus on that. Let's go through. We have time for at least another question. So let's keep this party going. There's a lot there. Let's talk about this one. This is more of a topic about an industry topic, and those certainly fit well with me. It's from Johnny B, who says, "What was the reason you left the industry and became a teacher instead?" Well, thank you, Johnny B, for that uplifting question. I did not leave the industry. I have not left the industry. I'm smack dab in the middle of IT right now. I work for myself, however, focusing on all of this, but I am also a Linux administrator, a Windows administrator, a network professional, and of course, have worked for other very large companies in Silicon Valley. For those of you that don't know, the last corporate job I had where I worked for someone else was with Palo Alto Networks. I was a senior systems engineer at Palo Alto Networks, and I focused on demonstrating, designing, and implementing next generation firewalls in some of the largest networks in the world. This is the focus I had at that point. And that was a great job, by the way. if you ever have an opportunity to be a systems engineer for some of these big companies, you have so much fun because it's something new every day. My systems engineering career reached back before Palo Alto Networks. I worked for, at the end of that, it was NetScout. NetScout bought the company I was with, which was Network General. Network General went through a number of owners up to that point, including McAfee. So technically speaking, I worked for McAfee at a time, although at the time we were called Network Associates. And before that, we were Network General, Network Associates, Network General again, then NetScout, and then finally I left the company and went to Palo Alto Networks. But I don't find, I really can't talk much about unpleasant aspects of this because I just loved working with cybersecurity. I'm the kind of person that loves to solve problems. I like to have a mystery and to figure out what that mystery is about. And working in next generation firewalls was a great way to do that. Imagine a meeting where you show up with this technology that to that point, the people we were demonstrating it to did not have. And we plugged in our technology to their actual network as part of the evaluation. So their real data was running through the firewall. And then we started creating reports, started looking at real-time views of what was going on the network. And there was always something that we could find that was going wrong on that network. Of all the hundreds and hundreds of networks I connected to throughout my career with that particular role, I think there was only one network I ever ran into that was just so squeaky clean. It was so good. I couldn't find a lot of really bad things going on. But it's remarkable how many times you would plug into a corporate network. People were visiting websites they should not be going to. It may or may not be what you're thinking. People were doing things on the local network that they should not be doing. There were malware that was coming from their mail server. There were attachments onto emails that were found to be malicious. All of this being found in real time on this next generation firewall. What we'd usually do is we'd plug it in. We go to lunch. We come back from lunch, and there would just be a wealth of information. One of the great things is I could click one button and create a huge report that had all of this in there, and I had something to kind of leave with them when we walked out the door. A remarkable technology. Even today, those Palo Alto Networks firewalls, everybody recognizes that the visibility of those devices is unprecedented. Nobody else has this. Nobody else comes close to what that technology does. It just crushes everyone. And that means it's just a lot of fun whenever you plug it in. There was always something new to learn. There was always new technologies that were being introduced. There was always new capabilities that were being introduced. It was not only fun because every day was different. It was also fun because you were being really pushed and driven technically. There was never a time where I sat back and said, well, I guess I know everything I need to know about this firewall. There's nothing more I could possibly learn, which is, that will never happen to you in the world of IT. And it did not happen to me in there either. But what I found was that, gosh, I worked at Palo Alto Networks, 7 years or so? Long time. I started when we were a startup. We were not a public company. Then we went public. And then I think I was, I think I have my ID around here somewhere from Palo Alto Networks, but it was like employee number 125 or something. It was like low numbers. Now, of course, there's tens of thousands of employees in this company. So we really got to watch it grow, and that was fun too. But the idea is that you can get jobs like this in the industry. And I think a lot of us hear about the bad stories. I worked for a bad boss and they were awful and they made us work ridiculous hours and they gave us dumb things to do. Those jobs are certainly out there, but that's not about cybersecurity. That's not about networking. That's not about technology. That's about the person who's managing that group. There are plenty of roles out there and plenty of jobs out there that are fun, intriguing. You learn things. You work with great people. You have a lot of fun. It is one of those where you just have to find the right one. Now, I've been through my career, and we've had conversations about this too in the study groups. I tended to get jobs like that every other job. For some reason, I couldn't see the red flags well enough. And I would have one job that was amazing, and I'd stay there for 5 years. And the next job I would jump into was just an awful decision. And looking back, I'm wondering, what was I thinking? why did I take that position? Why did I work for that company? Why did I work for those people? They're animals. They're ridiculous. They're not even of this world. What was I doing? And so I left there after 6 months and went to another job, and then stayed at that job for 5 years. And then the next one would be awful. Maybe I just forgot during that big, long gap just how bad some of these jobs can be. So there are certainly bad jobs out there, but it isn't the job that's bad. It's the people that are running the show that is the bad part. You just have to find the right environment. So I didn't have any unpleasant aspects. There's always things you wish you could do differently. That particular position with Palo Alto Networks was one where you went to the customers. So I would hop on a plane on Monday and I would be traveling until Friday, and then I'd finally come home. So I was away from home a lot. I was in hotels a lot. I was that person that traveled all the time. I've got, 1 million miles on Delta and 1 million miles on all the others combined. You're just in that travel mode constantly. Nothing phases you. Flights are changed, flights are canceled, whatever. We'll figure it out. It's normal. It's the normal part. It's our normal commute whenever we're dealing with that. So certainly there are downsides to some of those things you would run into, but those are relatively minor. Once you find the right role with the right company, working with the right people, it can't be stopped. It's such fun. So many things to do, so many things to learn. The upward mobility is practically unlimited. And because of that, your paycheck is practically unlimited. As you become more knowledgeable, as you become more specialized, as you get more knowledge, as you build that foundation, you're also becoming more valuable, and you can ask for more on your paycheck. And that's an important part of this too. This is a vertical market, IT in general, that has so many different options available. It has a ton of upward mobility, lots of capabilities for supporting yourself financially and your family, and you have options and flexibility as to the type of organizations you work for. This is very different than other places you might work. If you're in medicine, you're working at the hospital, you're working for a doctor. That's it. There's not a lot of different ways you can go. And once you have that medical job, if you are a nurse, I guess you could go back to school and become a nurse practitioner or a doctor, but you've got to go back to school to do that. There's years more to do that. IT, you don't do that. In IT, you might be doing Linux administration one day, and then you get a new job doing networking. Didn't have to go back to school. You just learned everything you could learn about networking, and now you're qualified for that particular role. Then you learn everything about the packets and the conversations and what's happening on switching and what the routing are and how the routing protocols operate and how you connect these IPsec tunnels together, and you do all of that. Well, now you're ready for security. So that's one of the benefits that I see with IT that is very different than almost any other type of position you could ever be in. Because now you determine what you do. Now you determine where you work. You determine what options you want to have available. Do you want a job where you travel a lot? Do you want a job where you stay at home every night? Do you want a job that some of it is in the office, some of it's work from home? You've got the flexibility to find the right jobs for what you want to do. This is something you could almost never do with any other vertical. You can't do this if you're an airline pilot. You're an airline pilot. That's what you do. You're not going to be something else. You can't, well, now I'm going to be I'm going to work in a different part of the airline. That doesn't commonly happen. You're a pilot. That's what you do. So this is tons of flexibility. And now you've got the option to do a lot with what you want in your career. I never thought when I started in IT that would ultimately be me addressing a problem I saw in the industry. And that's what brought me here. And the problem was that if you think back, this sounds laughable now when we talk about it, but at the beginnings of the internet, there were not a lot of resources available for understanding how to fix these challenging computer problems. And the reason that this whole thing got created that I am doing now is because I had family members come to me and say, can you fix my computer? I took it to this big box store and they looked at it for a month and then they gave it back to me saying, we can't figure it out. It's not working. And I thought, well, that's silly. They just need to go onto the internet and search for the problem you're having. Let me do it right here. We'll search for that problem in yahoo.com, in wherever we were searching at that time. And we hit enter and no answers were there. And I realized we are not doing a very good job of making this information available to people. And at the time, an A+ course was like $1,500. And we'd have to ship CDs to people for $1,500. I thought, $1,500? This is the internet. You can just make a video and put it online and everybody has access to this. Let's see how hard that is. And so we did. And it was hard at the time. There wasn't a lot of technology. There wasn't a lot of people doing this. And we kind of figured it out as we went. The first iteration of ProfessorMesser.com and these video courses were actually posted at blip.io. What? Yeah, it doesn't exist anymore. It never went anywhere. Blip.io. We had 1 million views on blip.io before we moved off of blip.io. And for a short amount of time, we moved over to Vimeo. They were in the industry and they had HD. Nobody had HD at the time. At that time, YouTube did not exist. So just to give you a perspective of the way the internet works. And then, of course, YouTube was created. It was really purchased by Google. That's when it got really popular. And we thought, well, that seems like a good platform. Let's go over there. They just turned on HD. Let's put our videos on YouTube. And that's when, obviously, everything sort of took off from there. So this is, I think, not me leaving technology. This is me continuing with the technology that I've always done, but it's positioning it and showing it in a different way. I'm still doing work behind the scenes on all of these servers and these systems, email conversions, PHP upgrades, Linux distribution, security enhancements. This is the normal part of my day. But this is also the normal part of my day, is getting across to you how you do all of those things, how you make all of those things work. I am still in the middle of it. And I think that's an important part of it too. I don't think you'll ever be able to get the technical side out of me. I'm always going to be doing that. But this is also an important part of that too, is taking that perspective of this industry, the upward mobility, the flexibility, the career advancement, the financial advantages, all of those things I am very bullish on. I'm wanting to kind of focus on how important those things are when working through them. So I think you should be too. That's the reason we do this. Not because I thought part of the industry did me wrong, or it'd be a great story, I guess, but how awful things were and I'm going to turn it around. No, I don't have to. I want more people to do this. I had a great time doing those jobs with those companies. I want you to have a great time doing those things with those companies. And I think this is a great way to make that happen. I want to get all of that information out there and make it so that instead of me giving you the fish, here is how you fish. And from that point on, you've got it. And what a great industry to be fishing in. It's a fantastic place to be, in my opinion. Well, I think that brings us to the end of another study group. We have gone through some great material today regarding our Core 2 exam. We've talked about security. We've talked about operating systems, talked about command line work, and a bunch of other things as well. Thank you so much for being here in that first hour and answering questions along with me. We love putting those together, and I love seeing the results of that when we go through. But I also like the questions you pose of me in this second after show. It's always fun to see what's top of mind for you, and I like discussing it with you as well. Of course, we do one of these study groups for different courses throughout the month. Make sure you check our calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. If you enjoyed this video, it would sure help us a lot if you gave us a thumbs up on the YouTube side. It really does help us quite a bit. It's why everybody you see doing a YouTube video always tells you that, because it really does mean a lot, and we sure appreciate it when you do that. So thank you for that. This is, check that calendar. We're going to be doing one of these next week. On Wednesday of next week is our Network Plus study group. Security Plus is a week after that. And of course, if you're watching this and all of that has already happened, check the calendar at professormesser.com/calendar. We'd love to have you for one of our live streams. Thank you so much for joining us on this unusual Friday study group. I hope everybody has a great weekend. We will see you next time on the A+ study group.